And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have my good brother here in the temple, the occasional Final Destination protagonist and master of cursed knowledge, good brother Monarch.
So it turns out there's a portion of wall where I work that has been slowly rotting out and full of mold, so who knows? Maybe I'll die of mold poisoning in the near future.
I seriously doubt that'll be the thing that does you in. It'll be something more embarrassing.
Probably.
Either that or it won't do you in, and you'll have the Grim Reaper being salty for several months. Or maybe lightning will strike twice or something.
But yes. What is it we're doing first again? Saints of the Empty Throne.
Mm-hmm. So this is
Big
one that I
fan.
happened to come across a while back. With a very unique approach. That's a word you're going to hear quite a bit tonight. But we're doing Saints of the Empty Throne first because this is the lighter of the two projects we're covering. Though both of them are pretty light. It's not very dense as far as the text goes. But I wanted an excuse to have a game that is delving into card mechanics. Because as I've said many times, that is an underrated thing. But the Saints of the Empty Throne is set in a post-revolutionary Great Republic in the early Black Powder era. The genre mixing up swashbuckling action and wandering hero tropes in some ways. They go into, if this is your first RPG, bringing up their book, Fundamentals of Tabletop Role-Playing, which we won't be reading for fairly obvious reasons. Saying the resolution system is a little off the beaten path, explicitly relying on guide, judgment calls, and fictional prompts rather than numbers, but it's simple to grasp. I feel like, based on that, what instantly comes to mind is Everway, which did not have a numeric pass-fail system, and instead had a what happens next using its own tarot-like deck with the Fortune deck. It was something that was a bit ahead of its time because this was early 2000s. Like early enough that Wizards of the Coast was not just doing D&D and nothing else. But say you need a copy of the Soothsayer's deck or some substitute, you could swap in a Tarot, Lenormand, or other Oracle deck, or use the D66 table. But even for a book that's this small, we do have a table of contents. Let me jump ahead a bit to see if we have an index. No, we don't. I'm not going to give too much shit to this for not having an index because that seems a little unfair with how light this is. But for inspirations, they cite the Three Musketeers, the Greatcoats, the Phoenix Guard, Dogs in the Vineyard. If you were around in the indie tabletop scene in the mid-2000s, Dogs in the Vineyard was going to be something you saw a lot. 50/50, Dove, Pilgrims of the Flying Temple, which does have a TTRPG. And Castle Falkenstein. Or is it Falkenstein? I always bounce back between the two.
I think it's Stein.
It is, but I like to make the young Frankenstein joke.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that movie in so goddamn long.
You know, the same reason I bring up Setagive. But first we have lore, where they bring up what the saints are. In our service in the service of the empty throne of the Great Republic, they swear a great many oaths relating to justice, generosity, and good order, and take these oaths seriously. They do not swear an oath to law, though they study it, and they are not police. They are often called to deal with matters of peace and justice. They are executioners. Performing an execution is the final step in becoming one of the saints. The greatest oath is, the empty throne will remain empty. Now, what that can be interpreted as is up to debate at times. Oh. But we kind of have a feel for the fact that the PCs are meant to be members of the Saints. You know, hence the name. And technically speaking, they're a special unit of the Republic Army, which amounts to a rare review by a general that's terminally out of favor with the Senate, for whom the Saints tour around and fill with liquor. You know how it is. The boss that everyone keeps drunk. Then it goes into what their expected duties are. And the privileges. As well as the hierarchy of the saints. And then we go into your saint. So this is where we're getting into character creation. You'll create your saint by filling out the table below, with lists follow to assist in this. Many elements inform roleplay more than action, but may be relevant on occasion. So I am, then your name of the house of, you pick a house, saint of the site of your initiatory execution, and titled your inherited title or titles. I'm a person of temperament. I'm an exemplar of a sphere of action, and an adept at 3 different spheres of action, but hopeless at yet another sphere of action. I possess the usual outfit of a saint, a sword of uncommonly sword quality, a talisman, my talisman type, a purse, that is my current purse weight, and a unique item. Then they give a sample example. And it is interesting that when it comes to name suggestions, they specifically bring up Old French. I think a lot of people will get very... Well, Three Musketeers was one of the inspirations cited, and it definitely shows here. But then we have house and surname. There are 6 houses of the old empire, named for animals in a spiritual tradition, though largely broken through symbology, colors, and place names. These 6 houses were bear, boar, crow, fox, owl, and stag. Saints, having noble descent, are aware what house they theoretically belong to and joke about their animal natures. They typically have surnames indicating the animal of their house, its color, or professions linked to that. Then they give a few examples of surnames in that theme. The saint of a place is where you first performed a given execution. Let's see, then titles and temperaments. Temperament being the default mode. Spheres of action is... I'd say this is the equivalent of skills. And since this isn't a game that's using hard numbers, that's why it's set up in this way. But this is another case where we have perception, but we don't have the spot check in that manner. I'm curious if the idea of a spot check is something that you're going to be keeping in your project, because I know I didn't.
It's not going to be like a 3rd edition spot check.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when that's was such a stupidly specific skill.
A specific skill that was overvalued. It was a product of the stimulation boner that was going on in the 90s. And also, it always seems silly that you have to roll to use your eyes. I think if you're looking for something specific and going around the room trying to find it, yeah, that's something you'd have to roll for. But just looking, like there's a chance you can't see it because your eyes are not working.
I'm definitely going to be doing some kind of a passive perception type thing.
Mm-hmm.
To where, like, look, if you have a high enough perception rating or whatever I end up going with specifically, I'm not making a roll for certain really low end shit.
Yeah.
There's a point it gets silly.
Mm-hmm. But then we have equipment, which a lot of it is what you'd expect for a musketeer adjacent equipment. I do like that they point out that their swords are mostly saber and cutlass like, heavy enough for an execution, light enough to fence. Qualities might include perfect balance, large size, flexible blade, or ancient provenance. There's also a talisman that you carry, as well as a purse. It's clear we're not doing bean counting when it comes to money, so I think this is the equivalent of, say, how many resources dots you might have in a World of Darkness game. But it says some may carry black powder weapons as adventure gear. But see, then we get to the rules, and this is a bit of an odd move, giving an example of action resolution before explaining the procedure.
Yeah.
I realize that this is a game that is a little off the beaten path, but I'm not entirely sure that was the right call. But then we get to the procedure, where first the player declares their action and the intended effect of that action. If the group isn't used to this, practice with "I will" action and "I want" result. Which, okay.
Practice saying that what? Okay, sure. I'll just roll with it for now, I guess.
The guide declares the cost or some modified result as if it were a natural extension, usually saying "you will." Costs can be extraordinary and absurd if the actions are. Note that the guide complement builds energy, acts as the yes of yes and / but. Skipping it is not recommended. The player can accept or restate. which is where we get the perhaps I misspoke. Then the guide or the player makes a fortune check, which the guide then interprets and then declares final results. When checking fortune, you draw a card from the Soothsayer's deck or one of the substitutes for it and interpret it to modify the results. In some cases, interpreting the whims of fortune can be straightforward. In other cases, it might take a bit of creative thought. Interpretation can be delayed on the stumper, treating it as it will occur as agreed, and making a note for later. Or, of course, in other cases, the note for later is the straightforward interpretation. Which feels like a, I will remember this kind of thing you see in the good Telltale games. Oh. And when it comes to there's a bit of guidance on guide cost, where the guide should be comparing skill against difficulty, but it really seems to boil down to whether or not you have a noted sphere of action or not, and what level you have it at. I say level broadly. Sometimes conditions can be put on the character, being tired, injured, or so on. These may be used in adjudications of later actions. If the guide finds it healthy to hand out a small stack of health tokens to each player or similar, they are well within their purview to do, but it's not required. And on sorcery, common sorcery imbues items, often simple pebbles, as charms. A charm is a one-use item that allows the holder to ask for a redraw on any bad result from the Sooth deck. A character can only hold one charm usefully. Holding several means none work. A sorcery adept can produce a charm with a day of work. An exemplar of sorcery can, in the same day, create 3 charms. Such items fade 7 days after creation. If unused, the magic of a charm fades away. It is interesting we have a very controlled form of magic. I.e., if you're using magic, you're doing it for this particular thing and not a whole lot else. Which, given the very swashbuckly nature of this game, I suppose makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm suddenly reminded of how 7C has magic, but it's not the usual spellcaster approach. And one of them in particular, Porte, is about creating portals, but there's a lot of catches. Because it's not you teleporting, it's you cutting a in and out gate into another dimension. A dimension that could, if you're not careful, could kill you. Or take you away and you don't come out the other side. You know, if you're familiar with warp travel, this will be second nature to you. And, of course, by that I mean warp travel circa Warhammer 40k. You know, which, it's fast, but you may end up where you want to. You may end up someplace else. You may end up sometime else. Or you may not come out at all. Or you go in and for everyone else it was a few seconds, but for you it was 100 years. But then they go into gameplay, which, admittedly, a lot of this is more on the guidance end of things, when it comes to quick options for how to start the session, the comportment, because Saints always aim to cut to a romantic, dramatic figure. Oh, and the things like social power and corruption. A lot of this is more on the guidance end of things, and the remedies, i.e., why you'd call upon the saints. And the final part is basically GM advice and a couple story seeds. And I realize that was a bit brief, but there's not a whole lot of. This is not a game that has a whole lot of mechanical crunch. And
I'm not gonna lie, it felt like we barely even talked about it.
yeah, there is certainly that. The vibe that I get out of this is a game that is going to live and die on how well the table as a whole is at interpreting a non-linear thing, but also how good they how good they are at improvising. Um, this is a I've described certain games as narrative heavy. This is even more so than that. Uh, and personally speaking, because of the fact that that is that kind of narrative thing is an extremely your mileage may vary. I can't even go with recommended. I feel like I have to go with playable for this one.
Yeah. This is kind of one of the worst kind of games for me, just because I'm here at the end of this. I don't really have a thought on this. I have no real feelings about anything we've gone over.
Mhm.
I'm just kind of sitting here like, yep, this is a thing that exists. Among all the things in existence, this is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know it could be argued that maybe we would have had a different take if we had looked at the Soothsayer deck. But at the end of the day, the Soothsayer deck is a tarot deck in all but name, and it's the same way that you are supposed to interpret the results of a tarot card. But
Oh, imagine the player and the DM having a different idea of what that tarot card's supposed to mean.
mm-hmm. Now there were some expanded materials. Things like a book for stunts, as well as the Book of Judgment, which is meant to add depth to political judgment, as well as a pamphlet about cults. But I know it would be tempting to say this would work as a beer and pretzels thing because of how easy it is to set things up. But it is the reason why I put it as playable is how much you're going to get out of this is going to very much be dependent on the table. And from an outside looking in perspective, that's not something I can really account for. You know, it's too much of an asterisk.
Oh yeah.
Now, I know this is a bit of a meme between us, but we may as well revisit it. Is this as bad as Valhalla? No.
I mean, I'll give Valhalla this. It certainly made me feel something by the end of that fucking book. But yeah, it's not that bad.
I feel like the setting conceit is doing a bit more heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Oh. in comparison to everything else. I don't know. Maybe this could be republished as a deluxe edition with stuff like stunts and judgment added in. But with that said, we'll before we jump straight into Valiant Horizon, we'll take a 5-minute stretch, and we'll be back in a few. So see you soon. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, and Doku won his own challenge yet again.
I am the champion.
Mm-hmm. Being several weeks late for his own challenge.
Sometimes you just have to go the extra mile.
Yeah. I know you had medical reasons as to why, which is why I didn't make a big deal out of it.
Yeah, it's fine. It's got something stuck in my throat.
Yeah.
Something really gay stuck in my throat. Wait, don't clip that.
Twitch, clip that.
No, don't listen to him, Twitch. It was a mild inconvenience.
Mm-hmm. But sorry about that. My model decided it was going to freeze on me.
See, mild inconvenience. Wait, no, stop. Okay, it's okay.
Is this like that gag of somebody saying "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse," but saying it while there's an Uma in earshot?
I mean, you know what? There was a joke, and I'm not gonna make the joke. I'm not gonna do it. I am not a young Turk.
Yeah. Anyway, so Valiant Horizon, coming to us from Binary Star Games, made using their Total Effect system.
What the fuck this? I'm getting very annoyed. This thing will not load. I'm mildly agitated, and because of such agitation, I am going to drink beer while you continue.
You were gonna do that anyways. What are you talking about?
I mean, I might or might not, but now I have a reason.
But let me make one.
I will point out quite quickly. On this, we do have a table of content.
Yes.
It is all hyperlinked, and on various pages there are hyperlinked page numbers to other things.
We also
I
have
am very
bookmarks.
pleased with this.
We don't have an index, but I'm not going to raise too much of a fuss this time.
It's 70 pages, not that big of a deal. And with how everything else here is linked to other stuff, that makes up for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's not really the issue. It's just I'm getting the forever spinning wheel of death.
Which I'd like to help out with that, but I can't. Anyway.
I mean, it'll fix itself soon, probably.
But it opens up with, tell us a tale of legends both ancient and those yet unwritten, of magic and steel, of souls and crystals, of loyal friends, deadly foes, and terrible creatures, of the legacy of heroes in a world yet to come. Tell us the tale of those beyond the Valiant Horizon. So, we have a bit of the premise. Valiant Horizon is a heroic fantasy game about regular people chosen to gain the powers and mentorship of departed heroes through magical means. By learning from and bonding with other fledgling heroes, they will develop their own legend and eventually become immortally enshrined in legend themselves. It's about meeting new friends and growing with them, vanquishing enemies, discovering ancient secrets, building a legend together, and making a mark on the world. And this is one of those games where we actually have a proper setting. I think this sort of assumptions thing should have also been in Saints of the Empty Throne. But this is Crystal Fantasy, not to be confused with Crystal Punk. We're not dealing with that game again. Megalos wasn't bad, it was just frustrating. But some of the assumptions about the setting is the soul of a living being is real and powerful. And those who make enough of a mark, their souls are not returned to the world, but hardened into heroic crystals. The chosen bearer of a heroic crystal may commune with the soul of its hero. Once the recipient has ascended to immortality themselves, the patron hero's soul is finally released. People in the past have also willingly preserved themselves, if not always for their ego, for use by future generations. Bearing these lesser crystals are able to invoke their creator's former powers. Sometimes, for unknown reasons, souls fragment instead of returning to the world. When this happens, they can corrupt beasts into dangerous monsters or manifest into terrifying forms. By trapping these fragmented souls into artificial crystals of their own making, an empire has become a dominant and troubling presence in the world. So, this kind of thing is right up the alley of this channel. As I think a lot of people are going to be looking at this and drawing upon Final Fantasy VI, for instance. Maybe Secret of Mana as well. But then we go into preparing to play. So this needs 2 to 5 people. 1 person the narrator, everybody else is players, so standard fare there. 6 dice labeled 1 through 6, because you need 6 d6s. Each person having a character sheet, as well as a way to track escalation, which is a number that is going to range from 0 to 6. You can use a unique die for this, or something else. I'm kind of reminded of the escalation die that's in that's in 13th Age. But then we get into when to roll. When you're using a combat ability, when calling for aid from a person, or when handling fame as a part of reputation. All other actions are covered without rolling, either by spending assets or conversation through player and GM. There's one thing I don't miss from my early years, it is needing to have a roll for every single conceivable action. Which, you know, is how you get those ridiculously long skill lists. Looking right at you, Palladium.
I'm gonna need you to roll a D100 for that.
No.
Well, how are you supposed to see Palladium? Use your eyes?
Alright, I'll grant you that. I kind of walked into that. Much like how Doku walked into his next drink.
Oh, speaking of that.
Mhm.
Oh,
But
wait, hold on. I need to roll a D100 for that.
When rolling, you usually roll at least 3d6. You add them together to get the total. Standards or powers always have something that happens, but these effects are amplified by the total. X means a total of X or less, or X minus. X plus Y means the total between X and Y. X plus means a total of X or higher. When the result fits in more than one effect band, all total effects are used. So we have the potential of getting multiple effects depending on where the die roll, but it's not necessarily a more result is better kind of thing. Each individual die used for the total may be used for the effect. Effect uses the notation low die, meaning the lowest of the 3, mid die, the middle of the 3, or high die, the highest of the 3. Some abilities will ask you to have an effect. In that case, round down to a minimum of 1. If you're asked to step up or step down a die, use the next highest or lowest die respectively. When asked to step up a high die result, add 1 to the effect. When asked to step down a low die result, subtract 1 from the effect to a minimum of 0. I think this is where we get the name of the mechanic, total effect. You're either rolling for total or you're rolling for effect. Sometimes you might be rolling for both, I think.
I have no idea why, but I'm just imagining someone saying, I rolled a jump. Oh, you got critical success. You jumped so successfully that your legs ripped from your body. You're dead.
That is stupid.
And it's funny. Stupid, yes, but also very funny.
No, that is the kind of thing that GM would do.
Yeah, well, to be fair, it's the kind of thing I would do as a GM, but that's because I'm an asshole.
So am I, but if somebody rolls a result that's supposed to get an automatic success, let them have that. Let them have that instead of devaluing what a natural 20 in that sense would be.
Hey, to be fair, I said critical but not automatic success. There is a difference. But I am that dick that would differentiate between the two.
But sometimes an ability may call for an inverse effect. This would be noted as inverse low, mid, or high, and basically means the die is reversed. 6 becomes 1, 5 becomes 2, 4 becomes 3, and vice versa.
Kinky.
If an effect value of 7 or higher would be inverted, it becomes 0. If an effect of 0 or less becomes inverted, it becomes 6. We also have advantage and disadvantage. If you roll with X advantage, roll X extra die and use the highest of all 3. With disadvantage, roll extra die and use the lowest of all 3. You can have up to 3 of either advantage or disadvantage, and they cancel each other out 1-to-1. I always prefer when you have multiple opportunities for advantage and disadvantage rather than you either have one or the other.
I mean, it definitely gives you more options. I can see how some people would maybe find that frustrating, but I personally don't.
Kind of depends on the system for me. Like, I understand why, say, 5th edition would use one or the other, because a single D20 is such a big swing. Something like this, where we're dealing with D6s, yeah, works a lot nicer here.
Because a game like Emberwind, which is also using a D20, doesn't cap advantage and disadvantage. The issue that I have with the whole advantage disadvantage thing in 5e is the fact that if you get advantage from multiple sources, that it doesn't matter. And if you qualify for advantage from more than one source, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Oh, that definitely bothers me. But it just kind of comes down, I'm not a big fan of this anyway. Like the whole advantage disadvantage setup.
It's fine if it's used as a substitute for situational modifiers. The problem was that's not how it was used. It was used as basically for anything and everything.
I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about this one. I feel like if you get used to it, it's not a big deal, but
you can say that about anything.
Well, yeah, fair point. Without playing it, I guess I can't really say all that much. I don't feel like it would be a big deal, but I do feel like it would be one of those things you really have to get used to.
Yeah. I prefer it here, especially given how there's multiple. You're not just looking at high and low. There's multiple potential results that you can get. But when taking action without rolling, you have assets, which are positive qualities you can use to your benefit. You can exhaust them to tap into something greater. But once you exhaust an asset, you can't exhaust it again until you next gain a level. So it is something that can give you an advantage, but you are limited on it. On the other hand, burdens are things that the GM can use to players' disadvantage. Flaws, reputations, and other situational penalties. If an action would have a burden on it, the narrator gives a complication, adds some sort of twist, or describe how it falls short. On the other hand, players can spend one determination, which we'll get to later, to ignore a burden. But flaws and reputations are a couple of examples. They count as a burden in any situation where it would make sense, but the first time a flaw is invoked in a session to add a burden, the affected character gets one determination. Similarly, when a narrator invokes a reputation to add a burden, its next fame roll is stepped down. And of course, you do have the option of acting without using an asset. But we also have escalation. This represents tension, momentum, and action in a scene. Escalation ranges from 0 to 6. Outside of combat, this is a measure of efforts taken towards the goal or how much help you have. It gets increased when efforts are made to address the task at hand or gain aid. During combat, it's also a measure of how long combat has been going. Escalation rises by 1 at the end of every round. Once combat ends, it falls back to the baseline out of combat escalation again. By default, characters add escalation to every total. It's also used by various abilities as a modifier. For example, some add harm equal to escalation, representing abilities that work better when the stakes are high. So, yeah, this isn't far removed from the escalation die in 13th Age. With determination, this is a resource that you can spend. You can gain it in a few ways. Every PC starts with one determination. You gain one when a flaw gives you a burden for the first time in a session. I feel like that first time only thing is to make sure that players and GMs don't try to abuse flaws to stack determination. And a character's class has a specific trigger for gaining determination. The first time it's fulfilled per session, the character of that class gets 1. This can be spent to negate a burden, to add 1 advantage or disadvantage to any roll before rolling, make a call for aid automatically succeed, step up or down all effects on a roll before rolling, reroll every die for any roll after rolling, stay up at 1 vigor when harm would have reduced you to 0 or less. You know, the old I didn't hear no bell. Gain the ability to revive yourself this turn. Using revive uses up one of your actions. Once again, I didn't hear no bell. Regain the use of a spent power or reaction. Or regain the ability to reuse but not exhaust an asset that you have already used this session. Spending determination doesn't require an action. Unspent determination is lost at the end of a session, so hoarding it is not a good idea. Basically, if you don't use it, you will lose it. But then we get to characters. There are 5 steps to making a character. First is thinking up a concept. That's 1 to 3 sentences. So no short essay as your character concept. I think we've known a few people who have done that.
Oh wait, hold on. Let me pull up my Tumblr.
Of course, Old Man Henderson did that, but he did that specifically to screw with his GM, who was being that guy.
I mean, to be fair, that is appropriate because, hey, if you're gonna be that guy, then expect the player to be that player.
Oh yeah. But then you come up with a background, a connection to the life you left behind. A flaw, something that might hinder you in your heroic path. Then think about the crystal-bound hero who has chosen your character. Pick a class representing the archetype of the hero your character will be associated with. Then tell the start of their tale. No two characters should start with the same class. Pick 2 standards and 3 powers from your hero's class. These can be changed whenever you have downtime. And that's how you'd make your character at level 1. Now with background and flaw, I do appreciate that they give there's a random table on the sidebar for both. Just as a, if you can't come up with one, here's a roll on this, and maybe there's one that'll help you. Oh,
That is a nice touch.
But characters are divided. Huh?
I was just laughing. I like how Bug Catcher is one of them.
Yep. But characters are divided between tier and level. Each increase in level gives you increases in capability. At levels 4 and 7, you go up in tier as well. Each increase in tier describing a shift in the scope of what you can do and how the world reacts to you. Until level 7, each level represents a growing affinity with their hero patron. At level 7 and onward, it represents you becoming heroes in your own right. So we have that hero paragon epic kind of thing that you see in 4th, or the 3-tier setup you also see in 13th Age and Axe. But also you can pick abilities from other classes by forming bonds with allies. It's a very nice touch. So the first tier is Fledgling. You're an adventurer just getting started. You take 2 actions per turn and can call for aid once per session. At level 1, you take 2 standards and 3 powers. At level 2, you take 2 reactions. At level 3, you can pick a 4th power. The famous tier is where you started to make a name for yourself. You have 3 actions per turn, and you can call for aid twice per session, as well as get reputations. At 4th level, you take a 3rd standard and a 5th power. At 5th level, you take a 3rd reaction. At 6th, you take a 6th power. Renowned tier is levels 7 through 9, and this is when you are firmly heroic. You have 4 actions per turn and can call for aid 3 times per session. At 7th, you take a 4th standard and a 7th power. At 8th, you take a 4th reaction. And at 9th, you take an 8th power. There's also a sidebar that there could be a legendary tier at level 10. Saying, oh, that's just a myth, right? But if it exists, it would be level 10. They take 5 actions per turn and could pick 5 standards and 10 powers. But we do have that nice escalation from being the FNG to being that guy. But
I mean, it's a nice touch.
Mm-hmm. But each PC has a hero crystal. Their memory is incomplete at first, but as the bearer adventures onward, they regain the skills and knowledge they had in life. At the beginning of a game, a player tells part of the tale of the hero of old, with whom their character is associated, usually their greatest triumph or most crushing defeat. You can add details to the set to it, past or present, that arise from the story. In this way, the setting of the game is defined through and tied to its champions. Each class has a list labeled "Tell us the tale of" with ideas for this initial tale. And as you grow into your roles and you get more control over those over the borrowed powers through advancement, you learn more and more of the forebear's life and story. And at level 6, you've gained a full understanding of the bonded hero and are coming to your own as a hero yourself. You won't learn more about the heroes you gain levels at that tier, but instead will be doing deeds that create legends of your own. And before we get to classes, I unfortunately have to step aside for one moment, so I'll be back in a couple minutes. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, apologies for the wait. But getting back into Valiant Horizon, we have, after the whole tell the tale of, continuing the tale, the end of the end and a new beginning. We have classes proper. There are usually 12 heroes, one for each of the 12 classes. Though there being greater or fewer heroes in this could make for some interesting stories. Classes are composed of combat traits, so different stats for vigor, recovery, and resistances, as well as a unique passive trait. Skill set, some suggestions for how you can use or exhaust your class as an asset. Determination, one unique way that you gain determination once per session. This also has active and reactive combat abilities. Some of these can be borrowed by other classes via relationships. So we have standards. Each class has 3 standards, which are abilities that may be used any number of times by taking an action. 2 of the 3 standards always involve movement. Powers. Each class has 6 powers. These are abilities that can only be used once per combat by taking an action. And reactions. Each class has 2 reactions. They don't require taking an action to use, but they can only be used in response to a certain trigger. And this happens sometimes. Sorry about that. Also, hey there, Mario. But the classes, first we have the Bard, which every ally at melee or near to you gains 1 vigor at the start of the round as their passive. Right. Let's see. They use the mid die for recovery. Their max vigor is 12. And here we can kind of see what was meant by the weight total and effect works for the dice roll. Because look at, for instance, Flourish. You inflict low die magical harm to an enemy at melee or near. If you roll a total of 9, an ally at melee or near regains low die in vigor. At 13, they get mid-die vigor instead. So even though you're rolling 3d6, the d6 are doing a lot more heavy lifting. Then we have the Berserker, which is exactly what you'd expect a Berserker to, and I do like the skill set suggestions that we have for each of these classes. The Blaze Magus, which this is for those who only want to cast Fireball and nothing else. Their whole thing is about fire. Then the Champion, who I'd say the Champion is akin to like a fighter, or actually, I was going to say Paladin, but not really. This is more akin to a fighter, given the stuff that they have. Let's see, then Commander, which, you know, the Warlord from 4th, or the attempts to do something like that in 5th? That is what this is. This is clearly meant to be the frontline leader. I've seen some say the Valor Bard in 5th edition is a successor to the Warlord. It's not. And I don't think any of the core materials for Pathfinder 1e had a equivalent.
Yeah.
But people wanted to put it in because it scratched a particular itch.
I think there was some 3rd edition extended book that had some kind of idea like that, but
the Marshal, which when they were designing 4th, they specifically cited that the Marshal was a frame of reference.
It didn't work in 3rd edition that well, I don't think.
Well, it was barely used because it wasn't in any of the actual RPG books. It was in the miniatures guide.
That's where it was. Yeah.
See, then we have Dark Knight, which is we've all played plenty of Final Fantasies. We know how Dark Knights work. And we have Earth Magus. So take what I said with Fire Magus and replace it with Earth. Frost Magus. I guess the Maguses are all benders. That's how I'm going to be perceiving it. Then the Knight, which this is more what I'd expect of a Paladin-like character, especially given that a lot of its standards and powers are about defense. See, then the Ranger. So we may as well ask and answer the question, does the Ranger in this suck? Is it cursed? And based on what we see here, I think the answer is no.
Yeah, looks good.
This is most definitely on the range combat adept. See, then we have Tactician. So we have two forms of the frontline commander approach. Though the commander, I think, is more about inspiring their allies. The Brava Warlord, and this is more of, well, the Tactical Warlord, where they're about utilizing the team as the weapon. Then Wind Magus, which, yeah, is basically utilizing air. Like, I was trying not to make Avatar jokes with the different Maguses, but if the boot fits.
Yeah.
No, I actually appreciate that. It's if they were to do just a mage class, that would be I think that would be a bit too wide of a net. And you'd end up having the same problem that you do with a lot of wizard classes in various games. Uh, where where there's where compared to other casters, there's not as much of a specific identity because the identity is you use magic more, which sounds like an identity but really isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least in comparison to, say, sorcerer or warlock or druid or any other caster. Ah. But speaking of which, then we get to combat. Ah. I do like that they make it very clear we're not trying to do realistic combat. And that's kind of made very clear with how it's handling range in a more abstract approach. So don't try and do 5-foot steps and dungeon crawls. This is more action movie style of combat. They do bring up that you can use a map and just have certain landmarks that you're moving between. But it's clear that you shouldn't be you shouldn't be trying to do the standard grid combat map. I think if you have more of a background in games like Savage Worlds, that won't be as much of an issue because games like Savage Worlds or Genesis or the like are built with that in mind as well. Oh. But now Vigor is basically HP. You recover Vigor restores to full between combat scenes. Within a combat scene, you can restore it using the Recover action, which restores an amount of Vigor based on your character's class. Harm is more dangerous injury and reduces your sorry, Harm is just their version of damage. I was thinking Harm was like a wound setup for some reason. I don't know why. Some characters will have resistances and vulnerability. When you resist a certain type of harm, you step down incoming harm of that type. Correspondingly, if you're vulnerable, I believe you step it up. Yep. And if you have both, they cancel each other out. But it looks like we're not doing initiative. It's a case of every PC takes a turn, then every NPC takes a turn. Then you increase escalation by 1, and any end of round effects, rinse and repeat. If you're ambushed, narrator acts first. If the players are ambushing, add 1 to escalation. Remember, escalation starts at 0. But
all pretty simple and straightforward so far.
During your turn, you can do at least 2 of the 2 actions. At higher levels, you can do more, as we mentioned. The main actions are use a standard, use a power, recovery, revive, and interact. And normally, I would say the whole powers can only be used once per combat would be a negative, but because you can restore powers using determination, it's not as much of a problem as it could have been. Because if this was And I think the intent is that the powers are more akin to like encounter powers in 4th. And I think if I were to make one edit, the class-based way to gain determination, I don't think that should be once per session.
I could see that. I'm with you there.
Especially given how, compared to the other ways to get determination, the means of doing it for the class-based version is gonna be easier. Like for example, Berserker, you get 1 determination when you deal harm to 4 or more enemies in 1 action. Which, since getting right into the thick of things, especially with things like Cleave, which has you do harm to all enemies in melee, and that's going to be a lot given the zone design of combat. I don't see a reason why that should be only once per session. It feels like that would create the rainy day paradox. But you can do a recover, which restores vigor. Roll and restore the amount of vigor that your class notes for recovery. So using the Berserker again, their recovery, you'd basically roll and you'd get vigor back equal to the high die. Versus, say, a Bard, which uses the mid die. But you can revive, restore an ally who's been down to their winded vigor, so basically half. If they haven't taken their turn this round, they can immediately take their actions. You can spend 1 determination to use this on yourself. It uses up 1 action of your turn, but you can immediately take any remaining actions after reviving. Or interact, which is the grab bag. You can always call for aid. If successful, this does not use an action, but moderate success or failure may cost actions or have other consequences. On the enemy side of things, they can each turn they can use either use an ability, hustle, so move to a near location, or if a prime, move to a near or far location. Prepare. Their next roll this round gains 1 advantage. This stacks with itself. Or interact, so the situational 1. But I was gonna say it. But as far as enemy types, we have minions, which is going to be your mooks. They tend to come in groups of at least 2. When you're at higher level, it can be up to 4. Typically, they have 4 vigor. They may have a resistance, but only if they can't move. Have 3 vigor or have a vulnerability. Minions can only use an ability once per turn. By default, their ability deals low die weapon or magical harm at melee. The next tier up is elites, which tend to have 8 vigor at first, and then gaining more as you go up according to tier. 2 abilities equivalent to class standards, and something extra, with a few examples there. Primes are the most complex, so these should be quest enders, so this is your boss type enemy. They typically have 20 vigor at minimum. 2 abilities equivalent to a class power, and something else to help them stand apart. Instead of acting during the enemy turn, they take 1 action after each individual player's turn. So they will take 1 action per player in total. In that regard, primes, I think they're meant to be akin to solos in 4th, which solos were things like dragons or beholders, those B-begs that are meant to take on an entire party by themselves. you know, the enemies was like, the encounter is built around this enemy specifically.
Oh yeah.
Oh. But it's for building an encounter, it's typically the minimum you should throw into at a party is per party member 2 groups of minions, 2 elites, or 1 prime. And also we have the scaling approach. I know it says 1 prime per party member, but given the fact that primes have 20 to 40 vigor, maybe it's just me, but I feel like a encounter with multiple primes might be overkill. Especially given the fact that the damage range is going to be pretty restrained.
Yeah.
They do also have a sidebar for if you want to do the legendary tier, which in that case they have a vigor of 50. But then we have a collection of different potential enemies, whether it be Imperial, natural enemies, so animals.
I'll say,
Fragmented.
considering the size of this book, this is a very nice selection we have here.
Oh yeah, fragmented horrors. I do like that they're all themed like that.
Yeah.
But then relationships.
These are kind of optional rules, just kind of reading on the side.
Yep.
I don't know if we really want to get much into here, but if you want relationships in your RPG with NPCs, here's some guidelines for it. And some minimal benefit with being able to call for aid.
Relationships generate bonds, which you can use for different effects. This is, I'd say one potential reason you'd want to have the relationship system is a way for you to use powers from other classes. For one. And of course the call for aid that's been mentioned a few times. A number of times based on your tier per session, you can call for help from the other character. Assuming they're willing to provide that aid, the narrator sets an effect die based on what's being asked. Inverse high die for small favors, inverse mid die for bigger favors, and inverse low die for significant aid. Then you roll and add escalation. If the effect is lower than the number of bonds or the total is 15 or higher, it succeeds. If the effect is equal to the number of bonds, the aid is granted, but there's a catch. If the effect is higher than the number of bonds, they can't help you, and there's a further complication. If the effect is higher and the total is 8 or less, it's a major complication. Or if you don't want to roll, you can just spend a determination to guarantee that the aid is granted. See, at 3 bonds, you can prepare reactions from the other character's class as well as your own. At 4, you can prepare standards from that other character's class. At 5, when calling for aid, the subject doesn't have to be nearby. If the call is successful, they arrive no matter what. And at 6, you have soul synchronization. Whenever you may switch abilities, you can also swap your current class with the associated hero's class, for the purposes of borrowing powers, reactions, and standards, or for using soul synchronization to swap back to your original class. Treat this as if you have 6 bonds with the original class. It is interesting that relationships are the way this game handles multi-classing.
I wouldn't have thought to do it that way. But sure.
I think this is also why when we looked at character creation, it brought up it's not a good idea to have multiple characters in the same class in your party. I think this is why. Oh. And Mario says, so a prime would be like an area boss? Yes. Oh. Then we have reputation as well. Which, reputation only matters at famous and renowned tiers. Because at first tier, you're too much of a nobody to have reputation. Once you get to level 4, you should decide what the most prominent thing you've done is, which is going to be part of that reputation. But if you don't keep up reputation, it fades, and this is where fame comes in. Each reputation starts with 10 maximum fame. Whenever a decent interval of time is passed in the story, the narrator subtracts the mid die from fame. They can take low die if they've done something almost in line with their reputation, or if people are slower to forget, or high die if they've done something in opposition to their reputation. If it reaches 0, you've lost that reputation. You can regain it at 10 fame by performing a similarly important deed. When you do a deed that reinforces a reputation, its maximum increases by 2, and its fame resets to that new maximum. If it should ever reach 20, that reputation is permanently enshrined as part of your character. From then on, it cannot lose fame. In Legendary tier, you can't gain or lose fame or reputations. Which I guess makes sense, because if you're at Legendary tier, you're the equivalent of a demigod. But reputation can be used as an asset, but it cannot be exhausted. It can also be used as a burden, which if you do that, your next fame roll is stepped down. If it's being used against a character, at least it means someone associates it with them reasonably well. This is an interesting approach of maintaining reputation. In a lot of games, reputation is something that is a resource you build up. This is one that you're trying to, instead of build up, keep up. I mean, you do kind of build it up, but it's a case of you want to keep that reputation and keep its benefits. Keep being a hero. It's an interesting spin on the concept.
Yeah, I don't think we've actually come across something like that. I like it.
Yeah, like I said, this is kind of taking the way reputation usually works in games and flipping it. But Tales and Narration is basically the GM advice chapter.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm rolling down, and that's basically all we're seeing there. We've got that. We've got some nice little printables.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The standards and reactions, and then revisiting the Tell Us a Tale. So with with Valiant Horizon, I like this a hell of a lot more than they did Saints of the Empty Throne in terms of having a voice in terms of as what it's doing. This doesn't have as strong of a setting as Saints of the Empty Throne, but it has a stronger theme, I think.
I don't think the lack of the strong setting is really going to matter here. It gives you enough of what you need.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this is kind of generic enough. You could use it in a lot of different ways.
I do think using it in something like this very clearly wants to channel the spirit of a lot of console style RPGs. I think if you were to try to do it in a more traditional high fantasy, like say Mystara, you might have issues.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I said describe it as generic enough to use in a lot of different ways. Like you're clearly not going to throw this into any kind of setting.
Mm-hmm.
You do have like a good amount of different ways you could do this within the context of how it sets it up. Like overall, I like the system.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any notable issues with it. It's presented pretty well. Hyperlinks are nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't really have any really strong opinions on it, but it's a good system. I'd easily give it a recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a strongly recommend.
I think the only thing that prevents me from going with a strongly recommend is it is going to be dependent a little bit on the genre savviness of the table. Not as bad as some games that I've covered on this channel.
Yeah.
But it is going to be that asterisk, that elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Especially the
think
tell
one
us
of the
the
things
tale
that-
of thing.
Yeah. I think what kind of keeps me from putting it in strongly recommend is, while I don't really have an issue with it, and I do think it'd be a fun one to play, nothing about it like really just jumps out at me. And it's giving me like a really good reaction. Like, it's consistently good front to back.
Yeah. But with that said, that is going to do it for this particular double feature. I do apologize for the times I had to step aside and how late we started. But when we come back next week, we are going to be delving into Gates of Crystalia. Which means there are a couple things I can have some fun with. One of them is once again revisiting cards for mechanics. That's always nice. The other is our first dip into an isekai adjacent TTRPG since This World Summons Too Many Heroes.
I don't even know how to feel about an isekai TTRPG, but I'm about to find out.
Well, I do enjoy triggering some folk because of the fact that the concept of isekai is older than the term itself. John Carter, which came out over 100 years ago, is an isekai. I know some people would cry foul at that, but consider the fact that he is in another world. He has abilities that he didn't have in his normal world, even if it's supposedly explained because Mars has lower gravity. But by all accounts, it still counts. Alice in Wonderland I'm a little bit iffy on because that is just as likely to be just a really bad trip. But the point is that the concept of isekai is not, by any stretch of the imagination, new. Especially if you grew up with certain TV shows and movies in the 90s where a kid getting thrown into some fantasy world was everywhere. I think there were like a dozen different examples of that. Or could always bring up King Arthur and the Knights of Justice. You know, a football team getting transported to the world of King Arthur. But that will begin next week. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.